Every house, every king, and every battle has its own truth. But there are stories older than crowns, darker than the night, and more dangerous than any blade. They were never written in books. They were whispered to fire, to the trees, and to the dead gods. And today, we dare to uncover one of them. The sea sighed beneath the cliffs of the Westerlands, whispering to the dark stone of Casterly Rock as it had for 1,000 years. The waves broke against the base of the mighty fortress, sending up salt and spray that glimmered in the fading light of dusk. High above, the golden lions of House Lannister gleamed on their banners, rippling in the wind. Yet for all their splendor, an unease hung over the rock, something unseen, like a chill that lingered after sunset. Sir Davin Lannister rode along the narrow cliff road, his crimson cloak fluttering behind him. The path wound upward in slow spirals toward the fortress gate. He was weary from the long ride from Lannisport, but a greater weight pressed upon him, the summons of Queen Cersei herself. Gold, she had written, had ceased to flow from the mines beneath the rock. Entire crews of miners had vanished. Some said the tunnels had collapsed. Others whispered darker things, of shadows moving without torchlight, of whispers echoing through stone. Davin did not believe in curses. He was a soldier, not a fool who jumped at tales told by firesides. Yet even he could not deny that something strange had befallen his family's ancestral seat. The guards at the gate bowed as he entered. Inside, the great halls of Casterly Rock were quieter than he remembered. The air smelled faintly of dust and smoke. Servants moved quickly, heads down, avoiding his gaze. When he asked after the mines, they muttered half-answers and crossed themselves with trembling hands. At last he found his uncle, Sir Forley Prester, in the council chamber. The older knight's face was drawn and pale, his eyes hollow from sleepless nights. "They're gone, Devon," Forley said, his voice low. 40 men, swallowed by the rock itself. We sent torches down the shafts. All we found were picks, helmets, and the echo of screams. Devon frowned. Tunnels collapse. That is no curse. Perhaps, said Forley, though his gaze flicked toward the stone ceiling, as if it might listen. But the miners swore they found something sealed off since the age of the first men. A vault carved deep beneath the mountain. They thought it held gold. The moment they broke the last wall, everything changed. He placed a weathered map on the table. It showed the twisting network of mines beneath the rock, a labyrinth of passages reaching down toward the sea. One section, drawn in darker ink, had been crossed out. "This is where they dug," Forley said, tapping the parchment. "The Vault of Echoes," they called it. Devon studied the map, then looked up. "I'll see it myself." His uncle's eyes widened. "You should not go. The rock is restless. Some say it wants its gold back." But Devon only smiled, a hard Lannister smile that did not reach his eyes. "The rock belongs to us, and I'll not have our miners frightened off by shadows and tales." That night, while the fortress slept, Devon prepared his gear: a lantern, a sword, a length of rope, and a pouch of gold lions for those brave enough to follow. 5 men volunteered, 2 guards from the gate, a stonemason, a torchbearer, and Meister Author, who claimed to have studied the old histories of the rock. They descended into the mines at dawn, passing beneath archways carved with the lion sigil, then through tunnels damp with seawater and lined with veins of pale ore. The air grew colder as they went, heavy with the scent of earth and rust. Their footsteps echoed like ghostly heartbeats. At last, they reached the collapsed shaft. Piles of shattered rock marked where the miners had dug. Strange symbols, rough and curling like claws, had been carved into the stone around the breach. The Meister brushed his fingers over one. "Old tongue," he murmured. "Older than the Andals, perhaps even the first men. It speaks of gold and blood bound by oath." Davan frowned. "Meaning?" Arthur hesitated. "It means this place was sealed, not merely buried." The men set to work clearing the rubble. As they dug, faint sounds came from beyond the wall, soft clinking, like coins falling one by one onto stone. The torchlight flickered, though no wind stirred. Davan's men exchanged uneasy glances. When at last they broke through, a gust of air swept out from the darkness, dry and cold as a tomb's breath. Their torches wavered, then steadied, casting light into a vast chamber beyond. Inside, gold shimmered, mountains of it, coins, cups, crowns, and jewels piled high, glittering like a fallen sun. Statues of kings stood among the horde, their faces worn smooth by time. Davan stepped forward, eyes wide. "The rock is richer than the realm itself," he whispered. The others murmured in awe. Yet Othor lingered by the threshold, pale and trembling. "Do not touch it," he warned. "There is a reason it was sealed." But Davan, proud and fearless, reached out and lifted a golden goblet. It was shaped like a roaring lion, its eyes set with rubies that glowed like embers in the torchlight. The air seemed to shift. A low hum began to vibrate through the floor, soft at first, then rising into a deep, mournful wail that echoed from every wall. The gold shuddered, coins spilled like falling sand, and from somewhere in the shadows, a voice spoke, hoarse and ancient, carried on the breath of stone itself. "Gold for blood, blood for gold. The debt is not yet paid." The torches flared and went out. Darkness swallowed them whole. When the torches died, the darkness within the vault was not like night. It was heavier, alive, pressing against their eyes until the men gasped for breath. The only sound was the soft clatter of falling coins, trickling like rain from unseen heights. Davan's hand went to his sword. The steel whispered as it left its scabbard, the faint glow of its edge catching the dying embers of his lantern. "Torches," he barked. "Light the torches, damn you!" Flint struck stone. Sparks danced. Then a faint flame licked back to life. When the chamber was illuminated once more, the men froze where they stood. The piles of gold had shifted. Where smooth mounds of coins had been, deep hollows now yawned as though something had moved beneath them. The stonemason muttered a prayer to the seven. The sound of his trembling voice echoed far longer than it should have. Meister Othor stepped forward, clutching his chain as though it might protect him. "This vault is older than any record kept by men," he whispered. "Before the Lannisters took this rock, before even the Casterlys. This was the hall of another people, one that worshipped the earth itself." "Then let their gods sleep," Davan said. "We came for the truth, not for tales." But his own voice sounded strange to him, smaller somehow, as if the vastness of the vault swallowed courage and breath alike. They moved deeper among the gold. Each step crunched upon ancient coins, the sound echoing like brittle bones underfoot. Along the far wall, they found carvings, figures of kings and beasts entwined, their forms worn smooth but their eyes still deep and knowing. The runes around them glowed faintly, as though a fire burned behind the stone. One of the guards knelt beside a statue. Its crown was of twisted gold, yet its face had no features, only a smooth plane where eyes and mouth should have been. "What kind of king is this?" he murmured. Meister Othor swallowed. "A king who wanted to be forgotten, perhaps." Then the air shifted again. A faint sound, A whisper of metal upon stone passed through the chamber. It was followed by another and another until the echoes surrounded them. The torchlight quivered. From the shadows at the edge of the hoard came a soft, dragging noise. Something moved there, half seen among the gold. The torchbearer stumbled back, his face pale. "There's something. There." Devon strode forward, sword raised. "Show yourself." The thing that emerged was no man. Its body shimmered faintly, like heat over desert sand, its form twisting as though woven of mist and memory. Eyes like molten gold opened in its formless face. When it spoke, the sound was the grind of coins and the sigh of earth collapsing. "Blood has broken the seal," it said. "The debt of the rock is owed once more." Othor fell to his knees. "By the Seven, what are you?" The figure regarded him for a long moment. "Once I was a king," it murmured. "My crown was stolen, my gold taken by thieves from the Western Sea. They buried my bones beneath their fortress and named themselves lords. But the earth remembers. It remembers the hands that stole and the blood that must repay." The guards trembled. The stonemason crossed himself and whispered that they must leave. But Devon stood firm, his jaw set, his heart pounding in his chest. "If you were a king, then your gold lies with my house now," he said. "You were buried here long before my blood ever drew breath. Whatever curse you speak of, it holds no power over me." The spirit's eyes flared. "All gold is bound by the greed that took it. You wear the curse in your veins, son of the lion." The torches flickered violently, and the chamber trembled as though the rock itself were groaning. Gold slid and cascaded in rivers, burying the feet of the living men. The spirit's voice rose, terrible and echoing through every corridor. "Gold for blood, blood for gold, the debt is not yet paid." Then it was gone. Silence returned, heavy and absolute. When the shaking ceased, Devon looked around. 2 of his men were gone. Only their torches remained, lying upon the floor beside the shifting gold. "Find them," he ordered. "Now!" They searched the vault, calling out names that went unanswered. The echoes returned to them distorted, whispering back words they had not spoken. At last, by the broken wall where they had entered, they found what remained of one of the missing men, his face pale, his eyes wide, his body half buried in coins that seemed to cling to him like leeches. Othor's voice shook. "The curse feeds upon greed. Every coin touched binds the soul." Devon stared at the fallen man, his hand tight on the hilt of his sword. "Then we touch no more." They fled from the vault, sealing the breach with stones and iron beams, their torches burning low. But as they ascended the tunnels, a faint clinking followed them, the sound of gold sliding against gold, as though unseen hands gathered what had been disturbed. By the time they reached the upper mines, dawn had come. Pale light seeped down from the cracks above, but it did little to ease the chill that had settled into their bones. Devon ordered the tunnels sealed, every shaft that led toward the vault blocked with stone. Yet even as he gave the command, he could feel something pulsing beneath the rock, like a heartbeat far below, deep within the earth. That night, sleep did not come easily. When at last he drifted into uneasy dreams, he saw the vault again, its endless gold, its silent statues, the shadow with eyes of molten metal. It spoke his name, not in anger, but in sorrow. The lion's pride will drown in its treasure. He awoke before dawn, drenched in cold sweat. Outside, the sea murmured against the cliffs, but the sound was wrong, too steady, too rhythmic, like the tolling of distant bells. And far below, unseen in the dark roots of the mountain, something moved once more. The gold was stirring, and the curse of the forgotten king had awakened. The rock would not sleep again. Morning came pale and cold, its light creeping over the cliffs of the Westerlands like a thin veil. Yet within the halls of Casterly Rock, dawn brought no comfort. The servants whispered of strange noises echoing from the mines through the night, soft, clattering sounds, as if unseen hands still sorted coins beneath the earth. Sir Davin Lannister rose before the sun. He had slept little, and what rest he found had been haunted by visions of molten eyes and golden rivers swallowing the rock. When he looked into the mirror, he thought his reflection seemed older, his hair touched by a faint gray that had not been there before. In the council chamber, Sir Forley Prester awaited him, his face drawn with worry. "The miners are refusing to go back," he said the moment Davin entered. "They say the earth moves when they sleep, that the walls whisper in the dark." "They whisper because fools listen," Davin replied, though his voice lacked conviction. "Tell them they'll have double wages for every day they work. The rock will not yield to superstition." But Forley shook his head. "You cannot buy courage from those who have heard the dead." Davin turned to the tall windows overlooking the sea. The waves shimmered gold in the morning sun. Yet, as he watched, he thought the color looked strange, almost the hue of old blood. He left the council hall and descended once more into the mines. He could not stay away. Pride drove him, but something else as well. A need to prove that the rock still belonged to the living, that the whispers below were nothing more than echoes of fear. The tunnels were nearly empty now. The few who remained worked in silence, their faces gaunt, their eyes darting toward every shadow. The smell of salt and damp stone hung thick in the air. Near the sealed passage where the vault lay, Davin found Meister Othor waiting with a stack of worn scrolls and a lantern. "You shouldn't be here," Davin told him. "I could say the same," Othor replied. "But I've found something in the old records. There was once a lord before the Casterlys, an ancient line of kings who ruled from this rock when the first men still spoke their tongue. One of them, King Hearth, was said to have bartered with spirits of the deep earth for wealth beyond measure. When his greed grew too great, he was cursed, his body entombed beneath his own treasure. They called him the Gilded King." "The Gilded King," Davin repeated quietly. The name rang in his mind like the toll of a bell. "He swore," said the Meister, "that his gold would bring ruin to all who claimed it without paying the debt he owed. The stories say he was buried with his crown still upon his skull and his soul bound to the treasure he had stolen from the earth." Davin clenched his jaw. "Old stories. My house took this rock fair and strong, and the seven bless those who rule with power, not fear." But Othor's eyes gleamed strangely in the lamplight. "Perhaps. Yet curses do not heed the prayers of men." That night, a storm came howling from the sunset sea. Waves crashed against the cliffs, their spray striking the lower gates of the fortress. Lightning flashed, and for an instant, the towers of the rock seemed to blaze with golden fire. Davin dreamed again. He stood in the vault, surrounded by gold that flowed like water. From the center rose the figure of a man crowned in fire, his body made of molten metal, and his voice the sound of coins falling endlessly. "The rock was mine before ever the lion wore its crown," said the spirit. "You have stolen my throne, my blood, my curse. Will you pay what is owed?" Davin raised his sword. "Begone from my house." But the spirit only smiled, and when he spoke again, the gold poured up around him, swallowing Davin whole. He woke gasping, the roar of thunder outside mingling with the pounding of his heart. For a moment, he thought he still heard coins clinking in the dark corners of his chamber. At dawn, Word came that another miner had vanished, taken by the rock itself, some said. His pick and helmet were found lying neatly beside a tunnel wall, as if he had simply stepped away and never returned. Fear spread quickly. Even the soldiers whispered that the curse had awoken. Devon tried to keep order, but discipline crumbled like wet parchment. One evening, as the storm's rage faded into mist, Forley Prester came to him again. "We must abandon the lower tunnels," he said. "Seal them all and leave the gold to its ghosts." Davon's pride burned hot. Abandon our wealth? The veins that made the Lannisters kings? No, the rock will not be ruled by fear or by the shades of dead kings. He gathered his armor and summoned a company of men, 20 in all, promising them a share of any treasure they reclaimed. "We go to end this curse," he told them. "If there are ghosts beneath the rock, let them see the steel of living men." They descended once more into the blackness, torches flaring in the damp air. As they approached the sealed passage, they found the stones cracked and shifted, as if something beneath had been pushing upward. They broke through, and once again the cold breath of the vault greeted them. The torches cast long shadows across the floor. The gold was different now, less like treasure, more like a sea frozen in mid-motion. Shapes seemed to move beneath its surface, glimmers of light that resembled faces. Maester Othor muttered a prayer under his breath. "He waits," he said softly. "The Gilded King waits." At the far end of the chamber stood a throne of solid gold, half buried in coins. Upon it sat a figure draped in tattered robes, its skull crowned with twisted metal. Empty sockets stared at them from beneath a circlet studded with dull gems. The men hesitated. None dared step closer, until Davon, driven by pride and defiance, strode forward alone. "King of Ghosts," he said, "your time has passed. This rock belongs to House Lannister. I'll see your bones laid to rest, as should have been done long ago." He reached for the crown. The moment his fingers brushed the metal, the vault erupted in light. Gold poured upward like molten fire. The throne cracked, and from its ruin rose the spirit once more, taller now, its eyes burning brighter than the forge of a smith god. "The lion's pride will be its tomb," it thundered. "The curse is not lifted, but reborn." The chamber trembled violently. Men screamed as the floor split, spilling rivers of glowing gold. The heat was unbearable, the air filled with the scent of metal and death. Devon stumbled back, his armor searing against his skin. He caught one last glimpse of the spirit's face, sorrowful, ancient, and endless, before the world collapsed in a storm of fire and gold. When the quake subsided, Casterly Rock shuddered from base to crown. In the halls above, the servants heard the earth groan and saw dust fall from the ceilings. When they ventured into the mines days later, they found no trace of Devon or his men. Only pools of hardened gold where the vault had been, smooth and silent as glass. And deep within that gleaming stone, faint shapes seemed frozen, men's faces caught forever in the gold that had swallowed them. The curse of the Gilded King had claimed its due. For 3 days, the rock stood silent, as though holding its breath. The storms that had battered the coast drifted east, leaving behind a sky of pale gray and a sea the color of tarnished steel. Not a word came from the mines, no hammer rang, no torch was lit. In the great hall of Casterly Rock, the golden lions seemed dimmer, as if dust had settled upon their pride. Servants crept about like ghosts, and even the courtyards where banners once flared with crimson and gold stood empty. On the 4th day, Sir Forley Prester descended into the mines with a handful of men. The air was still, heavy with the scent of stone and brine. They carried lanterns, but the light seemed to falter the deeper they went, as though something below swallowed flame. When they reached the breach where Devon and his men had entered, they found the passage sealed once more, not by tools or timber, but by a smooth, gleaming wall of gold. It stretched from floor to ceiling, as though the very earth had melted and cooled into solid metal. Forley touched it with his gauntlet. The surface was cold, almost glassy, and his reflection looked back at him, pale and distorted. Within the gold, faint shapes could be seen, faces perhaps, or tricks of the light. "By the gods," one of the miners whispered. "It's them." Forley turned away sharply. "We speak no word of this," he said. "The rock has buried its dead before, and it will do so again." They sealed the mines with iron and stone, setting heavy gates across the lower shafts. No one entered thereafter without leave. The maesters wrote that a collapse had taken the men, that the lower tunnels were unsafe. But those who had seen the golden wall knew the truth, or at least enough of it to fear the rest. Yet fear does not remain buried long. It grows, spreading like cracks in stone. Weeks passed, and still the rock slept uneasily. The servants whispered of footsteps echoing through empty halls. At night, faint metallic sounds drifted through the walls, soft, rhythmic, like the clinking of coins in an unseen hand. Then came the dreams. The first was the Meister, Othor, who had escaped the vault before its collapse. He woke one morning with golden dust upon his hands, though his chamber was far from any mine. He tried to wash it away, but the shimmer clung to his skin. That night, he was heard crying out in his sleep, calling Davin's name. When they entered his room at dawn, they found only his robes upon the floor, folded neatly, and a few coins scattered where he had lain, each coin bearing the faint impression of a face twisted in silent terror. After that, no one spoke of the curse aloud, but silence did not stop the whispers. In Lannisport, sailors began to tell tales of lights flickering along the cliffs at night, torches burning where none should be, far below the fortress gates. Some swore they saw figures standing upon the rocks at low tide, their armor dull and gold-tinted, gazing out to sea. Queen Cersei, ruling from King's Landing, received word that gold no longer flowed from the rock. Furious, she sent riders to demand tribute, but none who entered the mines returned. The wagons they left behind were found days later at the edge of the forest, filled not with coin, but with sand that glittered faintly in the sun, as if dusted with powdered gold. Rumors spread that the Lannisters' fortune had turned. The Iron Bank began to question its debts, and among the small folk, an old saying found new life. A Lannister always pays his debts, though in blood or in gold. The choice is not his to make. At last, Jaime Lannister himself came to Casterly Rock. The wars in the Riverlands were over, yet the scars of battle lingered in his weary eyes. His golden hand gleamed in the torchlight as he stood upon the ramparts, gazing down at the sea. He remembered his cousin Devon as a loud, boisterous man who laughed easily and feared nothing. To think that such a spirit had been swallowed by the rock seemed wrong, unnatural. But when Jaime descended into the lower halls, he felt it too. The strange pressure in the air, the silence that hummed with unseen life. In the mines, he found Forley Prester waiting with 2 guards and a single torch. "You shouldn't have come, my lord," the older knight said. "The rock is not what it was." Jaime stepped closer to the sealed passage. His reflection glimmered in the gold wall, ghostly and pale. "So this is where he fell," he murmured. "Devon, you foolish lion." Forley said nothing. Jaime reached out his golden hand and placed it upon the surface. It was cold, colder than any metal had a right to be, and yet, beneath the smoothness, he felt something stir, a faint vibration, a heartbeat that was not his own. He withdrew quickly. For a moment, he thought he saw movement within the gold, shapes shifting, hands pressing outward before fading back into the depths. "Seal this place again," he said hoarsely, "and let it be forgotten." Forley nodded, relief plain on his face, but as they turned to leave, the torch flickered, and a low sound echoed through the passage, a deep, mournful voice that seemed to rise from the earth itself. "Blood for gold, gold for blood, the debt endures." The flame went out. In the darkness that followed, Jaime heard the faint clinking of coins falling somewhere behind the wall, one after another, endless and slow. He never spoke of what he had heard. When he left Casterly Rock the next morning, he did not look back. Yet those who watched him ride down the coast road swore that his golden hand shimmered strangely in the light, duller, darker, as though a shadow lay beneath the gold. And within the rock, far below where men no longer walked, the gold still shifted in silence. The faces trapped within its depths turned ever so slightly, their mouths open in eternal whispers. The curse of the Gilded King slept once more, but it was a restless sleep, dreaming of the day when pride would wake it again, for pride never dies in the blood of lions. Autumn came to the Westerlands with long shadows and restless winds. The vineyards around Lannisport withered early that year, their leaves turning to bronze and gold before the harvest was half done. In the high halls of Casterly Rock, fires burned night and day, yet the cold within the walls deepened. It was not a natural chill, but something older, an unease that seemed to seep from the stone itself. The Lannisters had ruled for 1,000 years, and their banners still flew proud above the cliffs. Yet the rock had grown hollow. No laughter rang through its courtyards, no songs echoed from its feasting halls. The miners had gone, the smithies were silent, and the great vaults that once rang with coin lay still as tombs. Lord Forley Prester, old and cautious, kept the fortress running as best he could, but his hair had turned white in the span of months, and his eyes were haunted. He walked the halls at night, listening for the faint sounds that never ceased, the whisper of shifting metal, the faint clink of falling gold deep below. One evening, as the sun sank blood-red beyond the sea, Forley stood upon the battlements, staring westward. The air smelled of salt and iron. Behind him came the sound of hurried steps, his steward, pale and breathless. "My lord," the man stammered. There's someone at the gate." Forley frowned. "Who rides to the rock unannounced?" "I do not know," the steward said. "He bears no sigil, but he wears a cloak of black and gold. He says he's come seeking blood and debt." Forley's stomach turned to ice, yet duty compelled him to descend. In the courtyard below, the torches flickered in the sea wind. A single rider awaited, a tall man upon a black horse, his cloak glimmering faintly with threads of gold. His face was shadowed beneath his hood, but his voice was low and steady. "I seek the master of this rock," he said. "You stand before him," Forley answered, clutching his sword hilt. "State your name and your business." The stranger raised his head. His eyes gleamed faintly in the torchlight, not brown or blue, but molten gold. "I am a collector of debts," he said softly. "And this rock owes more than it remembers?" Forley's breath caught. "What trickery is this?" "No trick," the man replied. "The gold beneath your feet was bought with blood. It has lain too long without payment. Now the debt calls to me, as it once called to your cousin Davan." At the name, Forley felt the strength drain from his limbs. He drew his sword, though his hand trembled. "Leave this place, spirit or man, or I'll—" He never finished. The torches flared, their flames bending toward the stranger. The wind howled, carrying with it the faint sound of coins tumbling in endless rhythm. The man smiled, a slow, sorrowful smile, and turned his gaze toward the great gates of the mine carved into the mountain's base. "Gold remembers," he said. "Gold always remembers." Then he was gone, the horse and rider dissolving like mist before the dawn. That night, the rock trembled. Doors creaked open on their own. Mirrors cracked without touch. In the great hall, the lion banners swayed though no wind stirred. Servants fled, clutching their rosaries, whispering prayers to the seven. At midnight, Forley descended once more toward the sealed tunnels, driven by a terror he could neither name nor resist. The golden wall that had closed the vault was cracked now, fine fissures spreading across its surface like veins of lightning. A faint glow pulsed behind it, soft, rhythmic, alive. The Meister's old notes spoke of such things: gold that breathes, gold that remembers. Forley turned to flee, but his reflection caught him. In the smooth surface of the golden wall, he saw his own face, but older, hollow-eyed, crowned with a circlet of molten metal. Behind that reflection, shadows moved, dozens of them, men with sunken faces and armor streaked with gold. Their mouths opened soundlessly, but he could hear their words in his mind. Blood for gold, gold for blood. He stumbled back, choking on fear. "No," he gasped. "It's done. The mines are sealed. The curse is ended." The reflection smiled. It was not his smile. The golden wall cracked with a deafening sound. Shards fell like pieces of glass clattering upon the stone floor. A gust of air poured from the breach, cold, dry, heavy with the scent of old metal and decay. From that darkness, a voice rose once more, ancient and terrible. "The debt endures, son of lions. The rock was bought with my soul. It will not rest until the price is paid." The last thing Forley saw was the reflection of a golden hand reaching from the breach to grasp his shoulder. Then the light swallowed him whole. When morning came, the servants found the council chamber empty. Forley was gone. The only trace he left behind was a trail of faint golden dust leading toward the lower tunnels. Word spread quickly through the Westerlands. Casterly Rock was cursed, they said. The gold of the lions brought ruin to any who sought it. Merchants began to avoid the western roads, and ships turned their sails away from Lannisport's harbor. And yet, not all heeded the warnings. Greed, like pride, does not sleep long. A band of sellswords arrived some weeks later, men from across the narrow sea, led by a captain named Garin of Lees, who had heard the tales and come seeking the lost treasure beneath the rock. "Curses are for cowards," he said as they lit their torches. "Gold is for men with courage." They broke the seals upon the mine and descended, laughter echoing through the tunnels. For a while, all was silent. Then, from deep within the earth, came a sound that chilled the blood of every soul within the fortress. Screams, faint and short-lived, swallowed by a sound like grinding metal. When the noise faded, nothing moved within the tunnels again. The next day, at low tide, the fishermen of Lannisport found something strange upon the rocks below the cliffs, armor glinting gold beneath the water, the faces within still visible, mouths open in silent cries. And that night, when the moon rose over the sea, a new light flickered within the rock, golden and steady, burning from the deep places where no man dared walk. The curse of the Gilded King was awake again, its hunger endless, its reach eternal. For gold, as all men learn too late, is a living thing, and it never forgets the hands that took it. Winter clouds rolled across the sky, veiling the sun and laying a pale shadow over the western coast. Ravens wheeled above Casterly Rock, their cries sharp and hollow as knives. Below, the sea thundered endlessly against the cliffs, its waves surging as though stirred by the wrath of something deep and ancient. Few still lived within the rock. The proud fortress of the Lannisters, once bright with gold and song, had become a hushed and fearful place. The halls were damp with sea mist, the hearths burned low, and at night the walls seemed to breathe. A faint rhythm, slow and steady, as if the mountain itself still possessed a heart. The masters of Lannisport sent word to the citadel that a sickness of the mind had taken the rock. Those who remained spoke in whispers, eyes darting to the shadows. Servants vanished without sound, their beds left neatly made, their clothes folded, their absence swallowed whole by the stone. By midwinter, only a few souls kept the fortress from falling into ruin. The stewards, a handful of guards, and Lady Jenna Lannister, Devon's mother, who had come from the Riverlands seeking her lost son. She found no solace. Each night, she lit a candle for him in the great hall. Each night, the flame flickered strangely, bending toward the floor as though pulled by an unseen draft. And each night, she dreamed the same dream, a figure of gold kneeling before her, its eyes hollow and weeping molten tears. On the 13th night of her vigil, as the storm winds howled against the windows, a knock came upon the doors of the hall. The guards hesitated to open them, for no one visited Casterly Rock anymore. Yet the sound came again, slow, deliberate, and heavy as the toll of a bell. When the doors were drawn back, a single man stood in the archway. His cloak was travel-stained, and the hood shadowed his face, but the sigil upon his brooch gleamed faintly in the firelight, a roaring lion of red and gold. "By the gods," one of the guards whispered. "Sir Devon?" The man lowered his hood. It was indeed Devon Lannister, or what remained of him. His hair was pale as frost, his skin thin as parchment. His eyes gleamed strangely, too bright, too golden. He stepped forward, the hall falling silent around him. "Mother," he said softly. Lady Jenna rose slowly, her face drained of color. "Devon, my son." He smiled faintly, though it was a hollow smile. "I have come home." She ran to him, clutching his face between her trembling hands. His skin was cold as stone. When she drew back, her fingers shone faintly, dusted with fine golden powder. "Where have you been?" she whispered. "We thought you dead, buried beneath the rock." "I was," he said simply. "But the rock does not let its sons go so easily." His voice carried a strange echo, as though another spoke behind it. The guards exchanged uneasy glances, and one made the sign of the 7 across his chest. "Something lies beneath, Mother," Devon said. "Something that was here before our house, before the Casterleys, before men ever carved this mountain. It has awakened. It remembers its debt." Lady Jenna's hands trembled. "Then we shall pay whatever price it asks. Gold, silver." "No," he said. "It does not want gold. It is gold." The fire flickered wildly, the shadows dancing upon the walls. Devon turned toward the great stair that led down to the mines. "It calls to me still. I can hear its song." He began to walk. The guards moved to stop him, but he did not falter, and those who tried to lay hands upon him recoiled as if struck. His flesh was warm now, too warm, burning beneath their touch. He reached the lower halls before Lady Jenna could follow. The air there was heavy, damp with the scent of metal and salt. The walls glimmered faintly, veins of gold running through the stone like living things. From below came a low, steady sound, the clinking of coins, endless and patient. Devon's voice rose in answer, soft and distant. "I am yours. Take what you are owed." Lady Jenna cried out, but her voice was drowned by a deep rumble that shook the very floor. The torches flared and went out. A blast of wind surged up the stair, carrying with it the dry, metallic scent of molten gold. When the light returned, the passage was gone, sealed once more by a smooth wall of shining metal. Lady Jenna fell to her knees, her hands pressed against the golden surface. Through it, faintly, she could see her son's face, peaceful and still, eyes closed as if in sleep. Slowly, the gold darkened, swallowing him whole until nothing remained but her reflection. After that night, the rock grew silent again, but not empty. The servants who remained said that sometimes, when the wind rose from the sea, they could hear faint voices echoing through the lower halls, men's voices, calling to one another in distant tones, their words lost to the weight of the mountain. And on the coldest nights, when moonlight spilled through the narrow windows, Lady Jenna would sit before the golden wall, whispering lullabies from her childhood. The air shimmered faintly around her, and sometimes the gold seemed to weep. In King's Landing, word reached Queen Cersei that the mines of the rock had turned to solid gold, but could no longer be worked, that the wealth of her house now lay frozen, untouchable. She laughed when she first heard it. "A mountain of gold that no man may spend," she said, "typical of our luck." But later, when she slept, she dreamed of the sea turning to gold beneath the cliffs, and of lions drowning in its molten waves. And in the dark heart of the rock, beneath stone and memory, something stirred once more, slowly, patiently, as if testing the bounds of its prison. The curse of the gilded king had claimed another soul, yet its hunger was not sated. For the rock was alive now, and its veins ran not with blood, but with gold. Snow had begun to fall upon the western coast, dusting the cliffs of Casterly Rock in white and ash gray. The sea, dark as iron, hurled itself against the base of the mountain, its rage ceaseless and ancient. Yet the fortress above stood unmoved, proud and cold, its towers glimmering faintly beneath the winter light. Few dared to dwell within its halls now. Word of the curse had spread beyond the Westerlands, carried by sailors and merchants to every corner of the realm. They whispered that the rock had grown hungry, that those who lingered there too long were claimed by the gold that lined its depths. Still, the Lannister name endured, though it was spoken now with caution, not awe. The mines were sealed, but the weight of their unseen riches still pressed upon the world, and greed, like rust, eats even through fear. It was in that season that a new visitor came to the rock. He arrived at dusk, wrapped in a heavy cloak, his horse foaming from the long ride up the winding road. His name was Sir Taran Hill, a bastard of Lannisport and a distant cousin to the Lannisters. Ambitious and proud, he had grown up on tales of his kin's golden glory. Now, hearing the mines lay silent, he had come to claim his share, or so he said. The guards who still manned the gate tried to turn him away. "The rock has no lord," they warned, "only ghosts." But Taran only laughed, a hard, sharp sound. "Then I shall be its lord," he said. "If lions have forgotten their courage, it falls to lesser blood to remember it." He entered the fortress that same night, his boots echoing across the empty hall. Dust lay thick upon the banners, and the air smelled of cold stone and faint smoke. He dined alone in the great chamber, his torchlight glinting from the golden lions carved along the walls. When the servants brought him wine, they kept their eyes down. One of them, a boy no older than 12, whispered to him when the others were gone, "Don't go below, sir. The rock takes what it wants." Taran smiled and pressed a coin into the boy's palm. "Every treasure must be taken by a brave hand, lad. Tell me, where did they seal the mines?" The boy hesitated, but gold is a persuasive master. That night, when the moon rose pale over the sea, the bastard knight descended into the lower tunnels with 2 lanterns and a pickaxe strapped to his back. The passageways were silent, save for the echo of his own steps. The deeper he went, the stronger the air seemed to pulse, faintly warm and metallic, as if he walked through the veins of some sleeping beast. At last, he came to the place where the miner's work had ended long ago, the wall of gold, smooth and gleaming, unmarked by age or tool. He stood before it for a long while, his torch reflected 100-fold in its surface. "So this is the treasure that cowed the lions," he said aloud. "A wall of wealth beyond measure, and they fear to touch it." He drew his pick and struck. The first blow rang like a bell, deep and pure, echoing through the tunnels. He struck again, harder, and again, until sparks flew from the metal. The sound changed then, less like steel on stone, more like something alive stirring in its sleep. A hairline crack spread across the surface, bleeding faint light. The air grew hot, dry, heavy with the scent of burning coins. Taran stepped back, sweat running down his face. What in the 7 hells? The crack widened, and from it spilled molten gold, slow and thick, crawling across the floor like honey. He turned to run, but the air shuddered around him. A voice rose from the breach, ancient and terrible, neither man's nor woman's but something between. "Greed calls greed. The rock remembers its thieves." Taran froze. The gold pooled around his boots, cooling fast, trapping him where he stood. The light from the wall brightened until it filled the chamber, and within that light he saw shapes moving, faces pressed against the golden surface, their mouths open in silent screams. He tried to tear free, but the gold climbed his legs, his arms, his chest. His breath came ragged, the metal creeping higher with each heartbeat. "You seek to claim what was never yours," the voice said, "then claim it wholly." When morning came, the servants found the lower gates sealed by a new layer of gold, smooth as glass. In its heart, a faint shape was visible, a man's outline, his hand raised as if reaching toward the light. The boy who had shown him the way was gone as well. Only his coin remained, lying upon the steps, its lion's face melted into a twisted grimace. After that, none dared enter the tunnels again. Yet the rock did not sleep. Some nights, a low hum drifted up from beneath the mountain, a sound like distant singing, soft and mournful. The people of Lannisport began to shun the cliffs altogether. Fishermen would not sail near them, saying that the sea itself gleamed strangely when the moon was high, reflecting gold instead of silver. And sometimes, in the coldest hour before dawn, lights could be seen moving within the cliffs. Slow, flickering glows like lanterns carried by unseen hands. Those who watched too long claimed they saw figures there, walking through the stone as though through mist. At the citadel, maesters debated in quiet rooms whether the tales were true. Some said the rock was sinking, that the sea would one day claim it whole. Others whispered of an older truth, one that could not be written in any book, that gold, once bound to blood, will never rest until both are consumed. Winter deepened. Snow covered the roads, and the world grew silent. Yet deep within the rock, beneath centuries of pride and wealth, the gold stirred. It whispered softly through the veins of the mountain, calling to those who still dreamt of riches. And far away, in King's Landing, Queen Cersei woke from a dream of fire and gold. She stood at her window, staring west into the darkness. The wind carried with it the faintest echo of a sound she could not name, the chime of coins falling endlessly through stone. For though the rock still stood, and the lions still ruled in name, the true master of Casterly Rock had long since awakened, and it was neither man nor beast, but something older, colder, and eternal. The Gilded King was awake, and his throne was built of every soul who had ever dared to touch his gold. The snows thickened over the Westerlands, veiling the roads and forests in white silence. The high passes to the east closed, and Lannisport itself grew quiet, its harbor half frozen, its towers pale beneath the winter sky. Yet even in that stillness, the name of Casterly Rock lingered on every tongue, spoken not with reverence, but dread. They said the rock had gone hollow. They said gold no longer shone there, but bled, that the mines had turned to veins of molten fire, and that the sea groaned at its base, as if mourning the restless dead. Some claimed to have seen strange lights beneath the cliffs, glimmers of red and gold flickering in the deep water, like eyes watching from below. Still, gold is a language all men understand. It tempts the bold and damns the desperate. And so, as winter pressed harder upon the land, 3 travelers made for the rock: a sellsword, a septon, and a scribe. The sellsword was named Bernard Crake, a hulking man with scars like claw marks down his cheek. He had fought for Lannister gold once, and lost more friends than coin in the wars. Now he sought one final prize before age claimed him. The septon, Elias, wore robes the color of smoke and carried a wooden staff carved with the 7-pointed star. His faith was deep, but his purse was empty, and he told himself that to look upon cursed gold was not to take it. The last was Sorrel Rivers, a bastard scholar from Old Town who dreamed not of wealth, but of truth. He had read the tales of the Gilded King, of the curse laid upon the earth, and he hungered to see if such legends were real. They arrived at dusk, the sea wind biting through their cloaks. The gates of the rock stood open, but unguarded. Inside, the air was still as a tomb. Tapestries hung limp upon the walls, their lions faded and dull. "7 save us," murmured Septon Elias, crossing himself. "It feels as though no man has drawn breath here in an age." "Good," Bernard growled, drawing his sword. "Less trouble for us." Sorrel said nothing. His eyes gleamed in the torchlight as he gazed upon the golden sconces, the carvings of lions and kings. "A house built upon greed," he whispered, "and greed always digs too deep." They found the way to the lower halls with little trouble. The rock itself seemed eager to lead them. The stairs wound downward through ancient stone, and with every step, the air grew warmer, heavier, more alive. At last they came to the sealed passage, its wall smooth and gleaming, the color of dawnlight. The surface rippled faintly, as if stirred by something beneath. Sorrel approached first. "This is no ordinary gold," he murmured. "It breathes." Bernard hefted his sword. "It bleeds, more like. Stand back." Before either could stop him, he struck the wall. The sound rang deep and cold, echoing through the tunnels like thunder. The gold quivered, and for a heartbeat, the 3 men saw their reflections twist upon its surface, distorted, their eyes glowing like molten metal. "Do not strike again," Elias warned. "There is something alive within this metal." Bernard laughed, though uneasily. "Then let it wake and pay us what it owes." He raised his sword once more, but this time the wall struck back. The gold surged outward like a wave, swallowing him to the waist before he could move. His roar echoed through the tunnels as the metal climbed higher, searing and cold all at once. Elias grasped his arm, pulling with desperate strength, but the gold held fast. "Cut me free," Bernard bellowed. Sorel raised his dagger, slashing at the shining surface, but each stroke only birthed more light, and with every blow, the wall seemed to laugh, not aloud, but through the ringing of the metal, through the vibration that shook their bones. At last, Bernard's cries faltered. His body went still, his eyes dimming. The gold cooled and hardened, leaving his shape half buried in the wall, mouth open in a silent scream. Elias fell to his knees, gasping prayers to the seven. Sorel stared, pale and trembling. "It is alive," he whispered. "By the gods, the tales were true." The gold pulsed faintly, as if in answer. From deep within the earth came a low, rhythmic sound, like a drum beat, slow and mournful. The very stone seemed to breathe. Blood for gold, gold for blood. The words were not heard, but felt, thrumming through the air, sinking into their bones. Elias rose, gripping his staff. "This is no curse of gods or demons. It is the sin of men. Greed has given this place a soul." Sorel turned toward him, his voice trembling. "We must leave. Now, before it takes us too." But when they turned to flee, the passage behind them was gone. The stairs had vanished, replaced by a smooth slope of gold leading deeper into the mountain. The torches flickered. Shadows danced upon the walls, forming faces that were not their own. Miners, knights, lords, all twisted in agony. The faces moved as they watched, mouthing silent pleas. Elias clutched his staff to his chest. "The dead are bound here," he said, their souls fused to the gold. Then came a light, soft and golden, blooming at the far end of the chamber. A figure emerged from it, tall and robed, his crown molten and his eyes bright as the forge, the gilded king. His voice was sorrow and thunder together. "They took my wealth, my throne, my name. They buried me beneath their fortress of pride. Now they serve in my kingdom of gold." Sorel fell to his knees. "We did not steal from you." The spirit's gaze turned upon him, endless and heavy. "All who covet gold are mine." The ground trembled. The torches went out. For an instant, the world turned to molten light, and Sorel felt himself falling into a sea of gold that burned and sang and wept. When dawn came, the rock was still. Of the three who entered, none returned. Yet in the days that followed, the servants above heard faint scratching from the depths below, metal upon metal, steady and tireless, as though new veins were being carved by unseen hands. And far below, in the heart of the mountain, the gilded king sat upon his throne once more. The bodies of his newest servants cooled beside him, their faces serene, their flesh gleaming faintly with gold. He looked upward, toward the world that had forgotten him, and smiled. For men forget their debts, but gold never does. The year waned, the long winter deepened, and the Westerlands lay buried under snow that shone faintly beneath a pale, sunless sky. Wolves howled in the forests, and ships no longer dared the western seas. Even the proudest lords of the coast shuddered their manners and prayed that the spring would come again. Yet upon the cliffs of Casterly Rock, no prayer was answered. The fortress still stood in all its might, but within its halls reigned silence and dread. Fires burned low, and the walls, those vast ancient walls that had once seemed eternal, groaned softly as if the mountain itself had begun to dream. No one lived there now, save for a few who could not leave, servants too old or too poor to flee, a pair of guards who clung to duty more than reason, and Lady Jenna Lannister, who would not abandon her son's memory. She spent her days in quiet vigil, her nights before the golden wall in the depths below, whispering the prayers of her youth, though no god answered. It was said she no longer ate nor slept. Her hair had turned white, her eyes hollow. Yet every evening, she descended with a single candle, its faint flame trembling as she passed through the empty halls. The servants whispered that she spoke to someone unseen, that a man's voice murmured back from beyond the gold. So passed many months, until one morning the candle was found guttered in the stairwell, and Lady Jenna was gone. The gates were locked, the kitchens cold, and through the upper halls drifted a faint metallic scent, the smell of gold newly melted. When the servants fled at last, they took with them little but their fear and a handful of tales. Some said they had heard music echoing from the mountain's heart, a sound like harps strung with silver and bone. Others swore that at night the windows glowed faintly from within, as though the rock itself had begun to shine. For a time, the world forgot. The wars of men elsewhere burned hotter. Kings rose and fell. The faith quarreled with its own shadows. Only the sea remembered, washing ceaselessly against the cliffs where lions once ruled. But legends, like curses, do not die. They sleep. And when the snows began to thaw and the first ships dared the coast once more, whispers returned to Lannisport. The fishermen were the first to speak. They said that in the mists of dawn, when the tide drew low, they had seen golden figures walking upon the shore, men and women, tall and proud, their faces veiled in light. They did not sink into the sand, nor leave footprints. And when the sun rose, they vanished, leaving only ripples in the water where they had stood. Others spoke of the sea itself glimmering faintly at night, as if flecks of gold drifted through the waves. The captains who sailed too close found their ships coated in strange dust, and those who handled it suffered dreams that drove them mad. They spoke of voices calling from the deep, promising wealth beyond measure and a throne of shining metal beneath the sea. The Citadel sent a Meister to investigate. A man named Alaric Marbrand, learned in the histories of the West. He arrived in Lannisport with a small escort and a heart full of skepticism. "Curses are born from the fears of small minds," he said. "The rock is but a mountain, and gold but a metal. I will prove it so." For 3 days he studied the fortress from afar. Ravens circled its towers, but none roosted. At dusk, when the wind shifted, he thought he heard a faint ringing, like coins striking stone in the deep. On the 4th day, he crossed the causeway and entered the gate. He was never seen again. The guards who waited by the cliffs said they heard no cry, only the echo of his footsteps fading into silence. And then, faintly, the sound of a door closing somewhere far below. When they summoned courage to enter, they found the great hall empty. But upon the table lay the maester's chain, its silver links streaked with gold. Word of his disappearance reached Old Town, and soon even the maesters grew silent when the rock was named. They turned their thoughts to other things, but in secret, they copied his last notes. The air hums like the breath of some great forge. The gold is alive. Years passed, and the rock fell further into ruin. The banners decayed, the windows broke, and ivy crawled through the cracks of the ancient stones. Yet the gold endured, gleaming faintly through the dust and gloom. One night, in the port of Lannisport, a storm unlike any before struck. The sea rose in waves tall as towers, and the wind carried a sound not of thunder, but of singing. When the morning came, the storm was gone, but so were the ships. Dozens lost, smashed upon invisible rocks. The survivors who washed ashore spoke of lights beneath the water, vast and golden, moving like veins through the depths. And they swore that as they drowned, they saw faces in the waves, familiar faces, noble faces, their eyes bright as molten metal. In the months that followed, Lannisport emptied. The people fled inland, leaving the harbor to rot. The road to Casterly Rock became overgrown with briar and saltweed. Only pilgrims and thieves dared walk it, drawn by the old stories. Few returned. And yet, on certain nights when the moon was full and the tide low, travelers claimed they could see a faint glow far below the cliffs, a light shining from within the rock itself, golden and cold. Some said it was the treasure of the Lannisters, calling to those who still dreamed of riches. Others whispered that it was not treasure at all, but the heart of the curse, still beating. The bards who dared sing of it gave it a new name, the Weeping Mountain. For when the wind struck the cliffs, the sound that came forth was no longer a roar, but a low, mournful keening, as though the rock itself grieved for all it had devoured. And so, the legend of the Gilded King grew. Children learned to fear the glint of gold, to toss a coin into the sea when the sun set over the western waves. Merchants spoke of it in hushed tones, warning that no debt was worth the coin stamped with a lion's face. In the deep of winter, when fires burned low and the winds howled through the valleys, the old ones still told the tale of a mountain that remembered every hand that plundered it, of a king whose crown still burned beneath the earth, of gold that was no treasure, but a hunger, endless, patient, and alive. And they said that one day, when the pride of men grew too great once more, when greed again sought to master the world, the rock would awaken. Its gold would flow like blood, and its song would rise again. And the lions of the West, proud and doomed, would drown in their own splendor, just as the Gilded King had promised. The years turned like pages in a forgotten tome. Snow melted from the cliffs of the Westerlands, yet spring brought no laughter to the shores below Casterly Rock. The fortress still loomed above the sea, vast and eternal, but its shadow seemed longer now, its grandeur hollow. In Lannisport, fishermen no longer sailed west at night, and even the gulls had abandoned the air above the cliffs. But legends have a way of drawing the living, and so, one fateful summer, a host came from the east, knights and men-at-arms bearing crimson banners embroidered with the golden lion. At their head rode Sir Tygett Lannister, nephew to the late Lady Jenna, and the last of his line bold enough to return. He had grown up hearing the tales, that his kin were cursed, that gold had devoured their house, that the rock was a tomb. Yet Tygett was not a man who feared stories. The wars in the south had hardened him, and ambition burned bright in his eyes. He came with purpose to reclaim his family's seat, to silence the whispers, and to prove that the lions of the West still ruled their mountain. The gates of the fortress groaned open as his company rode through. Dust rose in clouds, and the sound of hooves echoed like drumbeats through the empty courtyards. 7 above, one of his men muttered. It's like a grave. Tygett dismounted, his boots striking the ancient stone. A grave filled with gold, he said. Let us see how dead it truly is. They set torches in the hall of the kings. The firelight gleamed upon the walls, revealing faded banners, empty thrones, and carvings of lions whose eyes seemed to glint in the shadows. That night they feasted, though the wine tasted of dust and the air was stale. Tyget sat alone at the high table, his gaze fixed upon the great stair that led downward into the mountain's heart. He felt the rock beneath him, vast and patient. It seemed to hum faintly, as though a deep voice murmured within its stone veins. When dawn came, he gathered his captains. "The gold that built our house still lies beneath this fortress," he said. "Our forebears sealed it out of fear. We shall unseal it out of courage." No man dared contradict him. They descended that day, torches flaring, iron boots clanging on the steps. The air grew thick with salt and dust. In the lowest chamber, they found the ancient gates of the mine, sealed with iron bars that were blackened and warped. "Break them," Tyget commanded. They obeyed. Hammers rang, metal groaned, and the air shuddered as the last bar fell away. A gust of dry wind swept out from the darkness beyond, carrying a faint scent, rich, sharp, unmistakable. Gold. They moved cautiously down the first tunnel. The walls shimmered faintly, threads of yellow gleaming through the rock. The miners of old had dug deep indeed. At last, they reached a vast cavern. It was empty, save for a smooth, curved wall that gleamed in the torchlight, a wall of gold, polished as glass. Tyget approached, his reflection glimmering before him. His armor, his face, the lion of his house, all shone back at him in perfect likeness. He lifted his gauntlet and touched the surface. It was cold at first, then warm. "Behold," he said softly, "the heart of the rock." Then, without warning, the torches dimmed. A low sound filled the chamber, a deep vibration, like the growl of some slumbering beast. The men stepped back. One dropped his torch, and the flame sputtered on the ground. Tyget's reflection moved, but not as he did. It raised its sword when his hands were still. Its eyes glowed faintly, molten and cruel. Then it smiled. The golden surface rippled, and the reflection stepped forward. Panic broke among the men. Some fled toward the tunnels, others drew steel, but the air itself seemed to twist and burn. From the gold poured figures, shapes of men, their armor gleaming, their faces blank. They moved silently, their steps ringing like the clash of coins. Tyget swung his blade at one. Steel struck gold and shattered. The figure reached out, touching his arm. Pain seared through him. When he looked down, the flesh beneath his sleeve had turned to metal, shining and smooth. He stumbled back, horror in his eyes. The thing that wore his face stepped closer. "Blood for gold," it whispered. "Gold for blood." The chamber erupted in screams and fire. Men fled through the tunnels, torches falling, their cries echoing through the hollow mountain. Some tried to climb back to the surface, but the stair was gone, swallowed by collapsing stone. When silence returned, the cavern was empty once more. Only the golden wall remained, rippling faintly, and within it, the faces of the fallen shone, frozen, half buried, their mouths open in eternal terror. Above, in the great hall, the servants who had waited heard a rumble deep below. The floor quaked. Dust fell from the ceiling. Then came a sound, a low, ringing note that reverberated through every wall, as if the entire mountain were struck by an unseen hammer. After that, all grew still. When the trembling ceased, the servants fled, leaving behind their torches and packs. From the windows, they saw the sea shining gold beneath the cliffs, as though the sunlight itself had turned molten. That night, the people of Lannisport awoke to see a strange light burning atop Casterly Rock. Not fire, golden, steady, and cold. It glowed from within the fortress, spilling through the windows and cracks until the entire mountain seemed aflame. Then, slowly, the light sank. The sea grew quiet, The stars vanished behind a haze of pale gold that lingered for days. When it faded, no man dared approach the rock again. Years later, travelers from the Reach claimed they saw something in the west on clear nights, a golden mountain beneath the waves, shining faintly in the depths. Others said the rock still stood, but hollow, its halls filled with statues of gold, men and women and lions, all gleaming in perfect silence. The singers called it the drowned kingdom of the West, and they said its ruler sat upon a throne of molten metal, his crown forever burning, his eyes bright with sorrow. The gilded king had claimed his realm in full, and from that day on, the sea that beat against the cliffs of the Westerlands bore a new name among sailors, the Golden Tide, for when the moon was high, the waters shimmered faintly with light, and the waves carried with them the faintest sound of ringing coins, like laughter from beneath the sea, soft and endless, echoing through time. Spring never returned to the western shores. Seasons passed, yet the land around Casterly Rock remained gray and barren, the grass brittle, the trees stripped of leaf and color. The sun itself seemed to dim when it touched the mountain, and the sea at its base shone faintly with a dull metallic hue. The rock still stood, vast and magnificent, but it no longer belonged to men. The air around it was strange, too still, too heavy. Birds that flew near its cliffs wheeled away shrieking, and sailors spoke of a whispering wind that rose from the sea each night, murmuring in voices that sounded half human, half song. The small folk kept their distance. They built their homes far inland, where the shadow of the rock could not fall. To them, it was no longer a fortress, but a monument, a tomb for the proud, and a warning to all who would seek gold beyond measure. But greed, as ever, is a patient thing. From across the narrow sea came new rumors of merchants and lords ruined by famine and war, of alchemists who spoke of a mountain that bled gold. And in time, whispers of the rock reached the free cities. Among those who heard was Magister Illyrio of Lys, a man who counted wealth by weight rather than by number. He had once lent ships to Westerosi lords and grown poorer for it. Now he saw a way to reclaim tenfold what he had lost. He gathered a company of bold men, sailors, mercenaries, scholars of the occult. He promised them shares of the treasure that lay within the mountain, treasure that no curse could guard forever. "Gold is not a god," he said as his ship crossed the storm-tossed sea. "It bends to will, as all things do." They arrived at Lannisport on a moonless night. The harbor lay empty, the city half deserted. Not even the watchfires burned. Only the wind moved, soft, cold, and carrying a faint scent of metal. When dawn came, they saw the rock for the first time. It rose from the cliffs like a giant's crown, its peaks gleaming faintly, though no sun touched them. "By the gods," one of the sailors whispered. "It shines still." The Magister's eyes glittered. "Then the tales are true." They began their climb at noon, winding up the ancient road that led to the gate. Their torches sputtered in the still air. Though the path was steep, they felt no wind, no bird song, no breath of life. It was as though the world itself held its breath in reverence or fear. At last, they stood before the gates. They were not of iron now, nor of oak. They had turned to gold, seamless and bright, as if forged by the sun itself. Magister Illyrio pressed his hand to the metal. It was warm. "Behold the work of kings," he murmured, "and now ours to claim." The gates opened without sound. They stepped into a hall vast beyond measure. Pillars of gold rose toward the vaulted ceiling. The floor was a mirror reflecting their faces in shifting light. The air smelled of dust and salt, and somewhere far below, A faint sound echoed, a slow, steady rhythm, like a heartbeat deep in the stone. Their footsteps rang softly. They passed through galleries filled with statues, men, women, children, all wrought of gold. Some knelt, some reached upward, some covered their eyes as if to ward off some unseen terror. "Beautiful," said one of the scholars. "Too perfect," muttered another. When they came to the throne room, they stopped. The throne itself stood upon a dais of stone, carved into the shape of roaring lions. Upon it sat a figure draped in tattered robes, his flesh gleaming faintly beneath the dust. His crown was molten gold, twisted and fused to his skull. His eyes, empty sockets of shimmering metal, watched them. "The Gilded King," breathed Illyrio. "By all the gods, he was real." No one moved. The air thickened. Then, from the walls, the golden veins began to glow, faintly at first, then brighter. The sound from below grew louder. Thump, thump, thump. The mountain was alive. The Magister's greed overpowered his fear. He stepped forward, lifting a hammer from his pack. "Break the gold," he commanded. "Take what you can carry." The sailors hesitated, but his promise of riches was too strong. The first blow struck the dais with a sound like thunder. The mountain answered. Light burst from the cracks, searing and cold. The statues shuddered. Their eyes opened. The men screamed as the air turned molten. The gold poured from the walls like rivers, flowing around their feet, their legs, their arms. They struggled, but every movement drew the metal higher. "Help me!" one cried, his face twisting as gold sealed his mouth. The Magister fell to his knees, clutching at the treasure that melted through his fingers. "Mine!" he gasped. "Mine!" The Gilded King rose from his throne. His voice was not a sound, but a presence, filling the air like the toll of a great bell. "You came for my gold," he said. "Then take it. Be it flesh, be it bone, let all be gilded." The hall blazed. When the light faded, silence returned. The throne room was empty save for new statues. Men caught mid-cry, their eyes frozen in horror, their bodies gleaming with fresh gold. Outside, the sea turned quiet once more. The sky above the rock cleared, but no bird flew across it, and no man set foot upon its road again. In time, storms came and broke against the cliffs. Lightning struck the mountain's crown, and for a moment, the entire rock flared with light, golden and terrible. Fishermen who saw it said that faces shone in the glow, hundreds, maybe thousands, men of every age, their mouths open in voiceless song. When the storm passed, the sea lay calm, reflecting the faint shimmer of gold upon the horizon. The free cities no longer sent their ships to the western coast. The maesters struck Casterly Rock from their maps, naming it the Forbidden Mountain. Yet sometimes, in the stillness of night, when the wind turns from the sea, the people of the Westerlands say they can hear faint echoes drifting over the waves, the clink of coins, the sound of hammers striking metal, and a voice that speaks like a sigh. Gold for blood, blood for gold, the debt endures. And so it does, for the rock remains, and beneath its shining skin, the heart of the Gilded King still beats, slow, patient, and eternal. Centuries drifted by like snow across forgotten graves. The lands of the Westerlands changed, and kingdoms rose and fell, yet the shadow of Casterly Rock endured. From the eastern roads one could still glimpse its distant crown, a pale shimmer against the gray horizon, half gold, half mist. The sea forever thundered at its base, gnawing at its roots, yet the mountain refused to crumble. Men said it was immortal now, no longer stone, but something else, something bound by the oldest curse of all, the greed of kings. No banners flew there. No light burned in its halls. The city of Lannister had long turned to ruin, its harbor filled with weeds and silence. Yet at night, when the wind swept from the west, the ruins sang, a low, metallic hum that set teeth on edge and stirred the hearts of those who dreamed of gold. And there were always dreamers. One of them was Sir Merrick Hill, a hedge knight with little coin and less honor. His father had died owing debts to the free cities, and Merrick had grown up on tales of the Lannisters' golden hoard, the treasure that could buy kingdoms and turn beggars into lords. He told himself he sought it not for greed, but to pay the debts of his blood. But in truth, he hungered for glory. He rode alone, save for a half-starved horse and a sellsword's courage. When he reached the cliffs, winter was breaking. The sea lay calm, silver and vast. From the shore, he saw the rock rising above the mists, its surface gleaming faintly like a coin half buried in the sand. "The gods favor the bold," he muttered, and began his climb. The road was long and silent. Moss grew between the stones, and the wind carried strange scents, salt, iron, and something faintly sweet, like the memory of fire. When he reached the gate, he found it sealed, not by wood or iron, but by solid gold that stretched smooth across the entrance. Merrick stared, awestruck. The gold was pure and untarnished, glowing softly even in the gloom. His reflection shimmered upon its surface, distorted and strange. He placed his hand against it. It was warm. "Open," he whispered. "By right of blood, by the courage of men, open to me." The gold shivered beneath his palm. A faint sound echoed from within, like the sigh of a distant forge. Then the wall parted, silent as the tide, revealing a long corridor that sloped downward into darkness. He hesitated only once, then entered. The passage swallowed him whole. His torch cast wavering light upon walls that gleamed like veins of sunlight trapped in stone. With every step, the air grew heavier, pressing against his chest. He thought he heard faint murmurs, voices speaking words too old to understand. At last, the tunnel opened into a vast cavern. The air shimmered with golden dust. Great pillars of metal rose from the floor, and beneath them lay a sea of coins stretching into shadow. It was wealth beyond comprehension. The hoard of kings, uncounted and unending. Merrick dropped to his knees, overcome. "By all the gods," he breathed. "It's real." He stepped forward, wading through the coins. Each clink echoed like music. His torchlight danced upon crowns, chalices, jeweled daggers, all glinting in the endless glow. Then he saw the throne. It stood upon a mound of treasure at the chamber's heart, a great seat wrought from molten gold. Upon it sat a figure draped in tatters, its flesh pale as ash, its eyes two pools of molten metal that burned without flame. The gilded king. Merrick froze. The air around the throne pulsed faintly, each beat in rhythm with his heart. "You have come far," the voice said, not spoken, but felt, like the echo of thunder within his bones. Merrick's sword slipped from his grasp. "I seek what is owed," he managed. "The gold that built my house." The figure stirred. "All houses are built upon the same dust." Merrick took a step forward, trembling. "The Lannisters stole it from you. I am no lion. I am a hill bastard. Let me take what they owed. Let me free your curse." The king's eyes flared brighter. "Free? There is no freedom in gold. There is only hunger." The air grew hot. Coins shifted beneath Merrick's feet, clinking softly, almost breathing. The figure rose from its throne, tall and terrible, its crown burning like molten sunlight. "You would claim my wealth," it said, "yet all who touch it are mine. For gold does not serve men, it devours them." Merrick tried to back away, but the treasure beneath him melted, clutching at his boots, his legs, his arms. The warmth became pain. He screamed as his flesh turned to metal, his body gilded by invisible fire. The king stepped closer, placing one hand upon the knight's brow. "Sleep, son of hills. The rock welcomes all who bow to gold." The world blazed. When the light dimmed, only silence remained. Upon the golden sea stood a new statue, perfect, gleaming, a knight kneeling before a king. The gilded king returned to his throne. His voice filled the cavern, low and mournful. "Still they come," he said. "Still they kneel." Above, the sea roared. That night, the fishermen of the coast saw strange lights flickering beneath the waves, ribbons of gold winding through the deep, as if the mountain were bleeding into the sea once more. They fled inland, swearing never to return. In Old Town, the Meisters dismissed the tale as folly, but among sailors, a new verse was added to the old song of the West. "Beware the rock, where gold does gleam, for none who seek it wake from dream." The gilded king still guards his throne and claims the wealth men call their own. Thus, the legend lived on. And beneath the cliffs, in his endless hall of gold, the gilded king waited, eternal, patient, and knowing that one day, when men once again hungered for more than life itself, his kingdom would awaken anew. For gold may sleep, but it never dies. 1,000 years had passed since the lions of the West vanished from the earth. Kingdoms had risen and fallen, and the world had half forgotten the name of Casterly Rock. The maesters wrote of it as a ruin swallowed by the sea, while sailors swore that its golden shadow could still be glimpsed beneath the waves on nights when the moon burned red. But the sea never forgets, nor does the earth. And one morning, a great storm broke the western horizon. The winds screamed like lost souls, the waves rose high as towers, and when dawn came, the cliffs of the Westerlands were changed. Where the sea had ruled for centuries, a mountain now rose again, black and gleaming, its crown wreathed in mist. The people of the coast beheld it with terror. Some said it was the rock reborn, others whispered that it had never fallen, but only slept. Among those who came to see it was a girl named Ellen, a fisher's daughter from the village of Crakeburn. She had been born during the storm and bore in her eyes the color of old gold, which made her neighbors uneasy. They said she was marked by the sea, or worse, by the curse that still lingered in the west. Ellen did not believe in curses. She had grown restless among the nets and salt and endless hunger of her village. When she saw the misted peak rising from the water, something inside her stirred, a voice that whispered of riches, of destiny, of secrets older than kings. She set out at dawn, when the tide was low and the mist thick. Alone she crossed the jagged shore where barnacles clung like armor, and the rocks cut her bare feet. The sound of the sea filled her ears, but beneath it she thought she heard something else, a steady rhythm, like a slow heartbeat deep within the earth. At the foot of the new mountain she found a cave. The water lapped at its mouth, whispering as though urging her inward. She hesitated only once, then entered. The air grew warm as she walked, the walls glimmering faintly. The deeper she went, the brighter the light became, golden, soft, like sunlight filtered through water. The passage opened into a vast cavern. Columns of metal rose from the floor, carved into the shapes of lions and kings, their faces half melted, their eyes empty. Pools of liquid gold gleamed between them, glowing faintly in the shadows. Ellen gasped. She had never seen such beauty, nor such sorrow. The air hummed around her, and when she took another step, the gold rippled, as if the mountain itself had breathed. "You hear it too," said a voice. She turned. From the far side of the cavern came an old man in tattered robes, his beard white as frost. His eyes, too, were touched with gold. "I thought I was alone," she said. He smiled faintly. "No one who enters this place is ever alone." He told her his name was Meister Aaron, one of the last scholars of Old Town. He had spent his life chasing myths, seeking the truth of the Gilded King. "Men forget their sins," he said, "but the gold remembers. It calls to those who still hunger." Ellen frowned. "Then why does it call to me? I am no queen, no thief." "Because you were born in the storm," Aaron whispered, "the day the sea gave up its treasure. You are bound to it, child. Blood to gold, flesh to curse." She felt anger rise in her chest. "I am bound to nothing." He looked at her sadly. "Then turn back while you can." But it was too late. The golden pools were shifting, drawing together, rising in waves of molten light. From their heart, a shape began to form. A figure tall and terrible, crowned with fire. Ellen felt her knees weaken. The air burned. The old man fell to the ground, trembling. "The Gilded King," he breathed. "He wakes." The figure stepped from the light, his robes flowing like molten metal. His eyes were twin suns, and when he spoke, the mountain trembled. "So long have I slept beneath your world of dust. So long have men forgotten my name. Yet still they come. Still they kneel." Ellen raised her head, defiant, though her heart quaked. "I came not for gold." "No?" The king's voice rolled like thunder. "Then why do you stand in my hall?" "I came to know what lies beneath the curse," she said, "to see if there is anything left of the truth." For a moment the great figure was still. Then his voice softened. "Truth. A rare coin. I was a king once, before greed made me a god. I gave men wealth, and they gave me worship. When I fell, they took my gold and built their thrones upon my bones." He lifted his hand, and the air filled with visions, cities of fire, kings crowned in molten crowns, the sea running yellow with gold. "They called me cursed, but it was not I who damned them. It was their hunger. It lives still, even in you." Ellen shook her head. "No, I want nothing but to end it." "End it?" The king's laughter echoed through the hall. "Gold cannot end. It only changes hands." The molten pools rose higher, swirling around her ankles, her knees, her waist. The heat was unbearable, yet she did not scream. "If you are truly a king," she cried, "then be merciful. Let the curse die with you." For a heartbeat, silence. Then the Gilded King looked upon her with something almost like sorrow. "There is mercy, child of the storm, but it is not for men. Only when all the gold of this world returns to the earth will I rest." The light flared. Aaron's voice rose in prayer, lost in the roar. Then, through the blazing gold, Ellen saw something. The face of a lion carved in the mountain, its eyes weeping molten tears. She reached out, her hands glowing. "Then take me," she whispered, "but take the curse with me." The chamber exploded in light. When the glow faded, the cavern was gone. The mountain stood hollow and still. The sea was calm once more. Days later, the fishermen found the shore littered with small golden stones, dull and cold. The mountain no longer shone. Its heart had turned to ash. But in the village of Crakeburn, the people spoke of a girl who had walked into the sea and vanished, leaving behind footprints that gleamed faintly in the moonlight. And in the deep, where the light never reaches, the Gilded King slept again, his voice faint as a dying flame. "Gold for blood, blood for gold. The debt is paid, for now." When the sea swallowed the last glimmer of gold, Peace seemed to return to the western shores. The mountain once called Casterly Rock was a husk of gray stone again, stripped of its luster, its heart hollow as a dead man's chest. Fishermen who had fled their ruined harbors crept back by slow degrees, and for a time it seemed as if the curse had ended at last. Yet peace in Westeros seldom endures. Years passed, and the rock lay silent. But silence is not death, only the stillness between breaths. Deep within the mountain, where molten light had once flowed like blood, a faint warmth began again to stir. It was not fire, it was memory, the echo of voices, the weight of greed, the gold's slow and patient dream. Far inland, the world had changed. The Iron Throne had long since melted into legend, and the kingdoms that followed it were smaller, poorer, and less proud. But gold remained the measure of all things, as it always had been. Among those who ruled the fractured Westerlands was Lord Tywald Rayne, a young and ambitious man who claimed distant kinship to the extinct lions of old. He was clever, bold, and restless. His house was rich in copper, but poor in pride. The old songs of the Lannisters haunted him. One rock made them kings, he told his council. Why should another not do the same for me? The elders begged caution, but Tywald would not be dissuaded. He gathered miners, masons, and swordsmen, and rode west beneath the banner of a red lion newly stitched upon silver. When at last he saw the mountain rising over the gray sea, his heart filled with fierce joy. "It is still ours to claim," he said. The wind off the ocean carried no sound, no cry of gull or wave. Even the surf below seemed hushed, as if listening. They camped at the base that night, the men drinking and laughing around their fires. But as the moon rose, their mirth faltered. From the cliffs above came a faint metallic hum, so soft it might have been the wind, yet so steady it could only be something alive. At dawn, Tywald led the first party into the ruins. The gate stood half buried by time, the archway rimed with salt and moss. They entered a hall vast and empty, its floor strewn with dust that shimmered faintly in the morning light. "It's only sand," one of the miners muttered, though his voice trembled. But Tywald knelt, rubbing the dust between his fingers. It was fine as flour and glittered with flecks of yellow. "Gold," he whispered. Hope flared in every heart. They worked for weeks, cutting deeper into the mountain's veins. The tunnels were unstable, the air foul, yet the promise of wealth drove them on. Soon they uncovered veins of pure metal, pale and soft to the touch. It did not gleam like ordinary gold, but glowed faintly from within. One night, as Tywald slept in his tent beside the cliff, he dreamed of a voice calling to him, a deep, patient whisper that seemed to come from the sea itself. The rock remembers. He woke sweating. The waves below glowed faintly, their crests gilded with pale fire. By morning, 3 miners had vanished. Their tools were found lying neatly beside a new fissure in the tunnel wall, its edges smooth as glass. The foreman swore it had not been there the day before. Still, Tywald pressed on. "Fear is for those who labor without reward," he said. "We are reclaiming what was lost." A week later, the fissure widened into a vast chamber. Within it stood a wall smooth and bright, a mirror of gold so perfect that every torch they carried was doubled and redoubled upon its surface. Tywald reached out. The metal was warm. "By all the gods," he breathed. The others watched as his reflection rippled, the golden face smiling though his lips did not move. The reflection lifted its hand. Behind its glassy eyes burned light. "Step back, my lord," the foreman urged. Tywald did not hear. His gaze was fixed upon that shining image, upon the crown of molten fire that shimmered upon its brow. You would wear it, the voice whispered within his mind. You would be king. He smiled faintly. Yes. The reflection's hand pressed to the other side of the golden wall. Tywald lifted his own. When flesh met metal, the mountain shuddered. The gold pulsed beneath his palm, veins of light spreading outward like cracks in ice. The torches flickered, the air grew thick with heat. Then came a voice, vast and sorrowful, echoing through every tunnel. Gold for blood, blood for gold. The wall burst open. A tide of molten metal swept through the chamber, devouring torch and man alike. The tunnels filled with screams that became music as the gold hardened around them. When the survivors clawed their way to the surface, the sun was setting behind the sea. The mountain glowed softly, as if lit from within. Lord Tywald was gone. In his place, upon the highest peak, they found a single statue, kneeling, crowned, and perfect. They fled without taking so much as a coin. Years later, when another generation of kings and fools had forgotten the warnings, travelers would speak of the rock once more. They said that on clear nights, its peak shone faintly, and that if one stood close enough to hear, a low hum filled the air, a heartbeat deep within the mountain. Old women in the villages taught their children never to touch a coin found upon the shore, for each glimmering piece might bear a curse. The rock pays its debts, they whispered, and it always collects. In time, storms came again. The sea rose, covering the base of the cliffs, and the world moved on. But sometimes, when the tide was low, sailors glimpsed something beneath the waves, towers gleaming faintly, doors of gold, and faces staring upward from the deep. The gold had returned to its master, and in that endless darkness, the gilded king sat upon his throne of molten sorrow, his eyes twin stars burning through the abyss. He did not move. He did not speak. Yet still his kingdom grew, for men above the waves had never learned to live without gold. Each coin struck in the realm carried a whisper of his name. Each hoard buried in secret called softly to the sea, and in the stillness beneath the mountain, the king smiled. For though ages may pass and empires fall, the curse endures. The gold remembers. It waits and hungers and dreams. And so the tale of the Lannisters, of Casterly Rock, and of all the proud men who sought to master gold came at last to its true ending, not with a roar, but with a whisper that would never fade. Gold for blood, blood for gold. The debt endures.